the stone of the Naga king. There are places in this world that hold their breath. You feel it the moment you step into them. The air gets heavy, the sounds of the modern world fade into a distant hum, and you get the distinct, prickling sensation that you are a guest in a home that was never meant for you. Cambodia is full of places like this. I thought I understood them. I thought I respected them. I was a fool. My journey began like so many others in the vibrant, chaotic heart of Siem Reap. I was a photographer, you see, chasing the ghosts of empires through a lens. I'd spent weeks exploring the grandeur of Angkor Wat at sunrise, the serene, smiling faces of Bayon, and the jungle-strangled roots of Tar Prom. I thought I'd seen it all, but the tourist trails, packed with selfie sticks and chattering guides, had started to feel hollow. I was craving something more, something authentic, something forgotten. That's how I met Bora. He was my tuk-tuk driver, a man with a smile as wide as the Mekong and eyes that held the quiet wisdom of someone who has seen the sun rise over the same rice paddies his entire life. One sweltering afternoon, while we were stopped for a bowl of Kai tea at a roadside stall, I told him what I was looking for. Bora, I said, wiping sweat from my brow, I want to see something no one else sees. An old temple, a ruin, something deep in the country, away from the crowds. Bora swirled the broth in his bowl, his smile tightening just a little at the edges. Bong, he said, using the respectful term for an older brother, the old places are old for a reason. They have long memories. I laughed it off. I'm not afraid of memories, Bora, I just want a good photo. He looked at me then, a long, steady gaze. Some memories have teeth. He paused, then sighed as if resigning himself to my foolishness. There is a place, not a temple, a bridge, very old. Older than some of the temples my grandmother used to say. It is called Spian Th Mornakariach, the stone bridge of the Naga king. It is not on any map. My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. This was the authenticity I was looking for. Can you take me there? Bora was quiet for a long time, watching the fat drops of an approaching monsoon begin to darken the red dust of the road. Tomorrow, he said finally, but we must go in the morning and be back before the afternoon rains. The spirits of the water are restless when the sky weeps. I agreed, but a part of me, the arrogant, thrill-seeking part, wanted to see it in the rain. I wanted the drama, the atmosphere. I wanted the perfect, moody shot. That desire would be my undoing. The next day, Bora's unease was a tangible thing. He drove faster than usual, his knuckles white on the handlebars of his tuk-tuk as we left the paved roads of Siem Reap behind, and plunged into a labyrinth of dirt tracks that cut through endless green paddies and small villages of stilted houses. The air grew thick, smelling of damp earth, charcoal smoke, and the sweet, cloying scent of frangipani blossoms. After an hour, he pulled to a stop where the track dissolved into a dense wall of jungle. This is as far as the tuk-tuk goes, he said, his voice low. The bridge is a short walk from here, through there. He pointed towards a barely visible path. You're not coming? I asked, grabbing my camera bag. No, Bong. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked at the tree line, then at the bruised, purple clouds gathering overhead. My grandmother told me stories. The Naga who guards that bridge does not like visitors. He sleeps. It is not right to wake a king. He pulled a small string of jasmine flowers from his mirror and pressed it into my hand. Leave this as an offering, a sign of respect, and do not take anything. Not a leaf, not a pebble. What belongs to the bridge must stay with the bridge. Promise me. I promised, of course. It was an easy promise to make, a simple appeasement of local superstition. I tucked the jasmine into my pocket, thanked him, and told him I'd be back in an hour. As I walked away, I heard him murmur something in Khmer, a soft prayer, before the sound of his engine faded, leaving me alone with the oppressive silence of the jungle. The path was suffocating. The humidity was a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders, beading on my skin instantly. The air was alive with the deafening, electric drone of a million cicadas, a sound so constant it felt like the jungle's own heartbeat. After a 10-minute walk, the trees parted and I saw it. My breath caught in my throat, Spian Th Mornakariach. It was magnificent, an arch of ancient grey stone, slick with moss and dark with age, spanning a sluggish brown river. It wasn't built like a modern bridge. It was assembled from massive, perfectly cut blocks, a testament to an empire's forgotten engineering. And on either side, lining the balustrade, were the Nagas. 7-headed serpents, their stone bodies coiling for 100 meters, their flared hoods forming a protective wall. Their faces were weathered by 1,000 monsoons, but their expressions were still clear, fierce, protective, eternal. The sky overhead had grown dark, the clouds churning. A low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. Bora was right, a storm was coming. I knew I should be quick, but I was mesmerized. I walked to the center of the bridge, the stone cool beneath my worn boots. I ran my hand over the carved scales of a naga, feeling the grit and the slickness of the algae. There was no one here. No tourists, no guides, no signs. It felt like I was the first person to find it in a century. I spent nearly an hour there, lost in my photography, trying to capture the sheer, immense presence of the place. The wind began to pick up, rustling the great canopy of the jungle and sending ripples across the murky water below. The air grew heavy, charged with electricity. It was time to go. As I walked back towards the jungle path, my eyes fell on the base of the bridge, where the massive stone blocks met the earth. There, nestled in the mud and roots, was a small stone. It was no bigger than my thumb, coated in the same green moss as the bridge and worn smooth by centuries of floodwater. It was a piece of it, a fragment of this ancient, forgotten place. A foolish thought entered my mind, a souvenir, a small, tangible piece of this discovery. I looked around, who would know, who would care? It was just a pebble. Forgetting Bora's warning, forgetting the jasmine flowers still crushed in my pocket, I stooped down. The oppressive weight of the monsoon sky seemed to press on my back. My fingers closed around the cool, damp stone. I slipped it into my pocket. Instantly, the world changed. The deafening, all-encompassing chorus of the cicadas didn't fade. It stopped. It was as if a switch had been thrown, plunging the entire jungle into an unnatural, profound silence. The only sound was the frantic thumping of my own heart. And then another sound began, a low, resonant hum. It wasn't a sound I heard with my ears. It was a vibration I felt in the soles of my feet, traveling up my legs, vibrating in my teeth. It was coming from the very bedrock beneath the bridge. The air, which had smelled of rain and earth, was suddenly thick with a new scent, a phantom aroma of lotus blossoms and decaying river mud, so strong it was almost nauseating. A sliver of moonlight broke through the storm clouds, casting a sickly, pale light on the bridge, and in that light I saw the impossible. The seven-headed serpents lining the balustrade, they seemed to writhe. It was a trick of the light, I told myself, a trick of the shifting shadows. But their carved stone scales glistened as if wet and alive, and their unblinking stone eyes seemed to fix on me, filled with an ancient, cold fury. Then came the groans. It was a deep, guttural sound, like the grinding of tectonic plates, echoing from the dark water of the river below. It was the sound of something immeasurably old and heavy shifting after a long slumber. My eyes were drawn to the bridge's immense shadow, cast upon the churning brown water, but it wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was detaching itself from the stonework. It was rising. The shadow peeled away from the river's surface, growing, expanding, becoming a towering, indistinct silhouette against the storm-racked sky. It had no definite shape, just a colossal, shifting mass of darkness, darker than the clouds, darker than the night. It was the shape of the bridge, but alive, animated by a 1,000-year-old rage. Panic, pure and primal, seized me. I turned to run, to flee back down the path to where Bora had left me. But the path was gone. Where the small opening in the jungle had been, there was now only an impenetrable wall of blackness, a void. It didn't look like shadow, it looked like an absence of reality. And from that void drifted a smell that chilled me to the bone, the smell of crushed stone, of deep, cold earth, and a scent like petrified anger. I was trapped on an ancient bridge with the waking spirit of the thing I had just desecrated. The small, moss-slicked stone in my pocket suddenly felt as heavy as a mountain, burning with a cold fire against my leg. I stumbled backward away from the path that was no more, my eyes fixed on the towering silhouette of rage that was the bridge's soul. The humming grew louder, a deep, earth-shaking thrum that resonated in my very soul. The Naga statues were no longer an illusion. Their great stone heads turned in unison, their movements slow and impossibly fluid, their collective gaze of fury pinning me in place. My mind was a screaming mess of denial and terror. This couldn't be real. It was the storm, the isolation, my imagination running wild. But the cold weight in my pocket was real. The unnatural silence was real. The scent of lotuses and rage was real. I scrambled away, crab-walking backward on the slick stone, my camera bag bumping uselessly against my side. The silhouette didn't move towards me. It didn't have to. The bridge itself was its domain. The very stones beneath me seemed to grow colder, the moss under my hands feeling less like plant life and more like cold, dead skin. I reached the other side of the bridge, my back hitting the coiled body of the last Naga statue. I looked for the path on this side, hopping for an escape into the opposite jungle. There was no path, only the same impenetrable, devouring darkness. It had swallowed both ends of the bridge, isolating me in the middle, a sacrifice on a stone altar. The jasmine flowers, Bora's gift, my forgotten offering. My hands trembled as I fumbled in my pocket, my fingers brushing against the cold, hard reality of the stolen stone. I pulled out the crushed, wilted blossoms. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice a pathetic, wavering thing against the deep hum of the earth. "I'm sorry, it was a mistake." I held the flowers out, a pathetic gesture of peace. The wind tore them from my grasp, scattering the white petals into the darkness. They didn't fall to the ground. They simply vanished as they touched the edge of the void. The towering shadow thing seemed to lean in, and for the first time I felt a presence, a malevolent intelligence studying me. It wasn't a ghost or a demon, it was the bridge. It was the land itself, an ancient consciousness of stone and water and memory, and I had wounded it. I had committed a theft not of property, but of being. I knew what I had to do. The stone, I had to give it back. My fingers, slick with sweat and rain, clawed at my pocket. I pulled out the small, mossy rock. In the pale moonlight, it seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light, a captured piece of the bridge's life force. I held it up. "Here," I cried out, my voice cracking. "Take it back, I'm sorry." I threw it, not towards the shadow, but towards the center of the bridge, hopping to place it back where it belonged. It skittered across the wet stone, coming to a rest near the base of one of the Naga statues. For a moment there was a change. The deep humming lessened, the pressure in the air seemed to ease. A sliver of hope, fragile and desperate, flickered within me. Maybe that was it. Maybe the apology was accepted. The groan from the river returned, lower this time, more ancient, filled with a deep and profound sorrow. The colossal shadow shifted, and I saw something that shattered my last vestige of courage. 2 points of light ignited within the shifting darkness like immense reptilian eyes. They were not angry anymore. They were hungry. The offering wasn't enough. The apology was too late. I hadn't just taken a stone. I had awakened the Guardian. And the Guardian demanded a price. A balance had been disturbed and it needed to be restored. A piece of the bridge for a piece of me. The darkness at the end of the bridge began to creep forward. It didn't rush. It flowed like thick black sludge, silent and inexorable. It consumed the stone floor, the Naga statues dissolving into its form as it advanced. The smell of crushed rock and ancient rage intensified, filling my lungs, choking me. I was trapped in a shrinking circle of reality. I looked down at the river, a 50-foot drop into churning, black water. It was a choice between the unknown terror of the water and the certain, devouring horror in front of me. My heart chose the water. I climbed onto the balustrade, my hands slipping on the wet, carved scales of the Naga. I didn't look back. I couldn't bear to see those hungry eyes. I took a breath that was more a sob and I leaped. The fall felt like an eternity. The wind roared in my ears. And as I fell, I heard a new sound, not from the bridge, but from inside my own head. A voice. It wasn't made of words, but of feelings, of images. The feeling of 1,000 years of slumber. The cold stillness of stone. The patient waiting for the monsoon rains, the memory of the hands that had carved it, of the kings who had crossed it, of the jungle that had tried to reclaim it. It was the bridge's memory, and it was pouring into me. I hit the water. The shock was immense, a brutal, cold impact that drove the air from my lungs. The current was powerful, pulling me under immediately, dragging me through a black, suffocating chaos of mud and unseen debris. I struggled, my limbs flailing, my lungs screaming for air, but something was wrong. I was being pulled down, but not by the current. Something had wrapped around my ankle. It wasn't a root or a vine. It was cold and hard and impossibly strong. It felt like stone. I was dragged deeper into the crushing pressure and the absolute black. The voice in my head grew louder, a chorus of stone and memory, and I understood. It wasn't letting me go. The bridge wasn't just a structure, it was a predator. Its roots ran deeper than the riverbed. My lungs burned. Black spots danced in my vision. The last thing I saw was not darkness, but a faint, green, phosphorescent light. The light of the moss-slicked stone I had taken, now glowing brightly at the bottom of the river. And coiling around it and around me was a vast, serpentine form made not of flesh, but of shadow and stone and water. The Naga king had reclaimed his property, and he was claiming me as interest. My world didn't end in a flash of pain. It ended in a slow, crushing embrace. My struggles ceased. The water filled my lungs. The voice of the bridge became my own thoughts. I felt my skin hardening, my bones turning to granite. I felt the 1,000-year slumber calling to me. I was becoming part of the memory, part of the stone. They never found my body. Bora, I'm sure, told the police I was a foolish foreigner who went out in a storm and was swept away by the river. He would know better, of course. He would know the truth. He would drive past that dirt track and whisper a prayer, warning his passengers to stay away, to never wake the sleeping king. My camera was found months later, washed up on the riverbank miles downstream, its memory card miraculously intact. The last photo was a blurry, panicked shot of the bridge. The experts said the strange, writhing appearance of the Naga statues was just motion blur, a trick of a long exposure in low light. They couldn't explain the towering shadow that blotted out the sky. So this is my warning from wherever I am now. From the cold, silent stone memory I inhabit. There are places in this world that are more than just rock and wood. They are alive, they remember, and they do not forgive. So if you ever find yourself on a forgotten path, standing before an ancient and sacred place, leave an offering. Show your respect. And whatever you do, do not take anything. Not a leaf, not a pebble. Because some souvenirs cost more than money. Some souvenirs cost you your soul. And you will spend an eternity at the bottom of a dark river, becoming just another memory in the cold, unforgiving heart of the stone. The sleeping spine of the earth. The air in Cambodia has a weight to it, especially at night. It's not just the humidity which clings to your skin like a second, damp layer. It's the weight of history, of belief. You can feel it pressing down in the quiet places, in the spaces between the jungle's chirps and croaks. I used to find it romantic. Now I know it's just gravity, the gravity of things that should never be disturbed. It all started with a stone, a small fist-sized carving of a Naga's head, broken from the balustrade of a forgotten bridge deep in the forests outside Siem Reap. My guide, an old man named Soffel with eyes that held the patience of the very temples he showed me, had warned me. His voice was soft but firm. Do not take bong. What belongs to the land must stay with the land. But I was arrogant, a collector of experiences, of tangible memories. I saw a piece of history moss-eaten and forgotten, and I wanted it. I thought who would miss it. So, as the full moon painted the laterite stones in shades of silver and shadow, I waited for him to turn his back, and I slipped it into the deep pocket of my cargo trousers. The weight of the Naga head stone was a cool, illicit secret against my thigh. I turned my back on the moonlit bridge, a self-satisfied smile on my face, and that's when it happened. The jungle's symphony of cicadas, a sound so constant you forget it's even there, abruptly ceased. The silence that rushed in was absolute, a physical pressure against my eardrums. It was deeper than just a lack of noise. It was an absence, a held breath. And then a new sound began. It wasn't a jungle sound. It was low, resonant, a deep grinding that seemed to emanate from the damp earth beneath my feet. It was the sound of the world's largest mortar and pestle, of stone grating against stone on a scale I couldn't comprehend. The vibration travelled up through the soles of my boots and into my bones. A cloying scent, which moments before had been the sweet, temple-offering perfume of frangipani, soured in the oppressive air. It curdled into the stench of stagnant canal water, of mud and decay and something anciently foul. It clung to my tongue, thick and oily. I glanced back over my shoulder, my heart starting a frantic, panicked rhythm against my ribs. The bridge was no longer a structure of laterite and moss. In the stark moonlight, its long, undulating form seemed organic. The carved stones of its balustrade looked like the notched vertebrae of a slumbering spine, the spine of something immeasurably vast, half buried in the soil. A searing heat bloomed from my pocket, so intense it felt like a chemical burn. I gasped, stumbling back. Through the thick fabric of my trousers, I felt the cold stone eye of the carving I had stolen begin to weep. A thick, warm, viscous fluid was seeping through the material, slick and unnerving against my skin. The secret in my pocket was no longer cool. It was alive, and it was furious. The journey back to my guest house in Siem Reap was a blur of primal fear. Soffel didn't speak a word. He just drove his old tuk-tuk with a grim set to his jaw, his knuckles white on the handlebars. He didn't look at me, not even when he dropped me at the gate. He just took my money, his eyes fixed on some point beyond my shoulder, and said, "May the spirits be merciful to your ignorance." Then he was gone, swallowed by the dusty, lamplit street. I stumbled into my room, the cheap air conditioner rattling in the window, a futile defense against the oppressive night. I locked the door, my hands trembling. The grinding sound had stopped the moment we hit the paved road, but the silence it left behind felt thin, fragile. My leg was damp. I fumbled with my trousers, pulling out the Naga head. It was cool again, unnervingly so, as if it had never been hot. but the single carved eye socket was filled with a dark, oily liquid that smelled faintly of river mud. A thick black tear track stained the weathered stone beneath it. My pocket was soaked through with the same substance. It didn't look like water. It was too thick, almost like blood that had been left in the sun. I set the stone on the small wooden table, my mind racing, trying to find a rational explanation. A chemical reaction in the rock, some kind of moss or lichen that secreted fluid when warmed by body heat. Every explanation felt pathetic, a child's argument against the dark. I tried to wash my leg, scrubbing at the stain on my skin, but the oily residue remained and the faint smell of decay lingered. I threw the trousers in the corner, wanting them out of my sight. That night I didn't sleep. Not really. I drifted in a state of feverish anxiety, the rattle of the AC doing little to drown out the memory of that grinding sound. Every creak of the guest house, every distant dog bark, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I kept my eyes fixed on the stone Naga head sitting on the table. In the shifting shadows of the room, its expression seemed to change. The serene, protective visage I thought I had stolen now looked like a mask of cold fury. The curve of its lips was not a smile but a sneer. Around 3 a.m, I heard it again. It was faint, so faint I thought I was imagining it, a low, subterranean grinding. It wasn't coming from outside. It sounded like it was coming from deep beneath the foundations of the guest house itself. It was a slow, rhythmic groan, like the earth shifting in its sleep. I sat bolt upright in bed, my blood turning to ice. I held my breath, listening. It continued for perhaps a minute, a deep, resonant vibration that I felt more than heard, and then it faded away, leaving only the sound of my own ragged breathing. I got out of bed and walked to the window, peering through the slats of the blinds. The street was empty, bathed in the orange glow of a single street lamp. Nothing was moving, but the air felt wrong, charged. I looked at the glass of water on my bedside table. The surface was perfectly still, but I had felt it. The building had trembled just for a moment. The next morning I woke up with a pounding headache and a sense of profound dread. I decided to get rid of the stone. My little adventure was over. I wasn't a tomb raider. I was a stupid tourist who had let greed get the better of him. I would take it back. That was the only answer. I would find Soffel and beg him to take me back to that bridge. But Soffel was gone. The number he had given me was disconnected. I went to the small tour operator's shack where I had hired him. A young woman was there, and when I described Soffel, she just shook her head. She said no one by that name worked there. She had never seen the old man I described. It was as if he had never existed. A new kind of fear, colder and sharper, began to creep in. I was alone in this. The days that followed were a descent into a quiet personal hell. The grinding sound became a nightly occurrence. Sometimes soft and distant, sometimes so loud it felt like it was coming from the room next door. I'd feel the floorboards hum with the vibration. Once, a long, thin crack appeared in the plaster wall above my bed, tracing a path like a lightning bolt or a serpent. The water from the tap in my bathroom began to run cloudy, smelling of mud and algae. I started buying bottled water for everything, even to brush my teeth. The smell of decay from the bridge, that putrid mix of stagnant water and rot, would ambush me at random moments. I'd be eating a bowl of noodles in a crowded market, and suddenly the aroma of lemongrass and chili would be replaced by that sickening stench, so strong I would have to fight not to gag. My reflection started to unnerve me. I looked haggard, my eyes wide and bloodshot from lack of sleep. But there was something else. Sometimes, for a split second, when I'd catch my reflection in a shop window or the dark screen of my phone, I thought I saw a texture on my skin. A faint, shimmering pattern like the scales of a snake. I'd look again and it would be gone, but the image was burned into my mind. The Naga stone sat on the table in my room, a silent, malevolent judge. I tried to put it in a drawer, but the feeling of being watched was even worse when I couldn't see it. I even considered throwing it in the river that runs through Siem Reap. I walked to the riverbank one evening, the stone heavy in my pocket, its heat a familiar, terrifying pressure against my leg. I stood on the bridge, looking down at the dark, swirling water, but I couldn't do it. A voice in my head, a primal, instinctual fear, screamed at me that this was part of a whole. To cast it away, to separate it further, would be an even greater transgression. I was trapped, haunted not by a ghost but by a piece of the land itself, and I was beginning to understand that I hadn't just stolen a rock. I had stolen a piece of something sleeping, and it was starting to wake up. My desperation led me to the dark, dusty corners of Siem Reap that tourists rarely see. I started looking for answers, not in guidebooks, but in old bookshops that smelled of paper, decay, and incense. In one such shop, run by a tiny ancient woman who watched me with cataract-clouded eyes, I found what I was looking for. It wasn't a book for tourists. It was a collection of local folklore, a cheap paperback with a faded cover, the Khmer text translated into clumsy, halting French. I sat in a cafe, my hands shaking as I turned the brittle pages, and there it was, a story, a legend about the great Naga of the Western Barres. The story didn't speak of them as the multi-headed guardians you see carved on temple causeways. It spoke of something far older, primordial. It described a single, colossal Naga, a being so vast that its body formed the bedrock of the entire region. It wasn't a creature living on the land, it was the land. Its spine was the mountain range, its veins the rivers, and for millennia it had slept. The legend said that the ancient kings did not build the great waterways and reservoirs. They simply uncovered the ones that already existed, tracing the dormant arteries of the slumbering earth god. The temples and bridges were built not just as structures, but as anchors, as sacred pins to hold the great being in its slumber, to appease it with offerings and reverence. And then I read the line that made my breath catch in my throat. It described the signs that the great Naga was stirring in its sleep. The first sign was the waters turning foul. The second was the sound, a deep, grinding rumble from within the earth, which the text translated as the sound of the world's bones shifting. The book said that the being was bound to the earth, but its essence, its consciousness, was tied to the sacred stones carved in its image. To remove one was not just theft, it was like taking a single nerve ending, a direct line to the creature's dreaming mind. It was an act that would not just anger it, but awaken it. I dropped the book on the table, my mind reeling. The bridge, the slumbering spine, the grinding, the weeping stone. It wasn't a metaphor. I hadn't just angered a local spirit. I had disturbed a geological living deity. The piece of stone in my hotel room was a part of its body, and it was calling to the rest of itself. The grinding wasn't the sound of it waking up to hunt me. It was the sound of it coming to get its missing piece back. The arrogance drained out of me, replaced by a pure animal terror that was so profound it was almost calm. I knew with absolute certainty what I had to do. I couldn't just get rid of the stone. I had to take it back. I had to put it back exactly where I found it. It was my only chance. Finding a driver willing to take me was the first challenge. I couldn't explain why I needed to go to a ruined, unnamed bridge in the middle of the jungle at night. The first 3 tuk-tuk drivers I approached just laughed or shook their heads, pointing at the darkening sky. The 4th, a young man with a weary face, finally agreed after I offered him an absurd amount of money. He didn't ask questions, but I could see the suspicion in his eyes. The journey was a nightmare. The moment we left the lights of Siem Reap behind, the jungle felt different. It wasn't the place I had visited with Soffel. The air was thick, heavy with that now familiar stench of mud and rot. The sounds were wrong. There were no cicadas, no frogs, just a deep, oppressive silence, punctuated by the sputtering engine of the tuk-tuk. The stone in my pocket grew steadily warmer. Not the searing heat from before, but a pulsing, living warmth, like holding a small animal. I could feel a faint vibration coming from it, a hum that matched the low-frequency tremor I could now feel in the road itself. My driver felt it too. He kept glancing nervously into the suffocating darkness that pressed in on either side of the dirt track. "This place is not good tonight, Bong," he said, his voice tight. "There is a bad feeling here." About a kilometer from the bridge, the tuk-tuk's engine coughed, sputtered, and died. The driver tried to restart it, but the engine just whined uselessly. The headlights flickered and went out, plunging us into near total darkness, save for the pale, sickly light of the moon filtering through the dense canopy. "I cannot go further," the driver said, his voice trembling. "The engine is dead. You must go alone. I will wait." He wouldn't look at me. He was staring into the jungle, his face a mask of fear. I had no choice. I got out my small flashlight, cutting a weak, trembling beam into the oppressive dark. "Wait for me," I said, my voice sounding pathetic and thin. He just nodded, not taking his eyes off the trees. The walk was the longest of my life. Every rustle of leaves was a monster. Every snap of a twig was a footstep behind me. The grinding sound had started again. It was louder now, much louder. A constant, deafening roar that seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. The ground was visibly vibrating, the beam of my flashlight shaking with the tremors. It felt like walking on the deck of a massive, groaning ship. When I finally broke through the tree lane and saw the bridge, I almost collapsed. It was wrong. It was horribly, fundamentally wrong. The moonlight cast everything in stark relief. The bridge was no longer still. The laterite blocks were shifting, moving against each other with that deafening grinding sound. The entire structure was slowly, perceptibly undulating. The balustrades, the spines of the Naga, were rising and falling like the slow breaths of a gargantuan beast. The air was so thick with the stench of decay, I had to cover my mouth and nose with my shirt. The stone in my pocket was now searingly hot, the pain almost unbearable. I pulled it out. In my trembling flashlight beam, it glowed with a faint, internal red light. The oily black tear was flowing freely from its eye now, dripping onto the ground with a soft sizzle. I knew I was walking into the heart of something that could obliterate me without a second thought, but I also knew that turning back was not an option. I took a step onto the bridge. The pressure was immediate and crushing. It felt like being 100 feet underwater. My lungs burned, my head pounded. The grinding was inside my skull, shaking my teeth. I forced myself forward, one agonizing step at a time, moving towards the spot on the balustrade where I had taken the stone. The gap was still there, a dark, empty socket in the living rock. As I drew closer, the movement of the bridge became more violent. The ground beneath me heaved, and I had to drop to my hands and knees to keep from being thrown off. I crawled the last few feet, the rough, moving stone scraping my skin. The heat from the stone in my hand was so intense I thought my flesh was melting. I reached the gap. It seemed smaller now, the stones around it having shifted. I held up the glowing Naga head, its light illuminating a scene of impossible physics. With a final, desperate surge of strength, I pushed the stone towards the socket. The moment it touched the edge of the opening, the world exploded. A psychic shockwave slammed into me, a blast of pure, ancient consciousness. I wasn't just seeing a bridge anymore. For a single, terrifying, sanity-shattering second, my mind was connected to the thing I had disturbed. I saw what it was. A being of stone and earth and water, coiled for miles and miles beneath the Cambodian soil. Its thoughts were not thoughts, but geological pressures, the slow crush of continents, the patient erosion of millennia, and I felt its awareness. It was a cold, alien, immeasurable rage. Below me in the earth, under the very spot where I knelt, a single, vast eye opened. It wasn't a physical eye, but I saw it. An eye the size of a lake, made of liquid darkness and ancient malice, and it was looking directly at me. I was a flea on the back of a god. With a scream that was torn from my throat, I jammed the stone into the socket. It clicked into place with a sound that was lost in the deafening roar. And then silence. The grinding stopped, the shaking ceased, the immense pressure vanished. The air cleared, the foul stench dissipating, replaced by the clean, earthy smell of the jungle night. I lay gasping on the now-still bridge, my body trembling uncontrollably. Slowly, tentatively, the sound of a single cicada started up, then another, and another. Within minutes, the jungle was alive again with its familiar, comforting symphony. I don't remember getting back to the tuk-tuk. I only remember the driver's wide, terrified eyes as I stumbled out of the darkness. He started the engine on the first try, and we fled without a word. I left Cambodia the next day. I didn't pack. I left my clothes, my camera, everything. I just took my passport and went to the airport. I'm home now, thousands of miles away. I tell myself it was a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by heatstroke and dehydration. I try to believe it, but some things won't let me. The trousers I wore that night, the dark, oily stain from the weeping stone never washed out. No matter what I use, it remains, a faint, dark map of my terror. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the rain is falling, I hear it. Very faint, very far away, but it's there. A low, resonant grinding from deep within the earth. But the worst part, the thing that keeps me awake, is the water. Whenever I look at my reflection in a dark puddle, or a still lake, or even just a glass of water in a dimly lit room, for a split second I see it. My own face looks back, but my eyes are wrong. They are flat, black and reptilian, and I get the unshakable feeling that it isn't me who is looking out, but something else, something vast and ancient looking in. I returned what I stole, but I don't think the debt is paid. I didn't just wake it up, I made it aware of me. I am a name it now knows, a nerve that has been touched. It is sleeping again, but a part of its dream is now of me, and I have a horrible feeling that one day it will decide to wake up and finish what it started. So if you ever travel to those ancient, beautiful places, I beg you, look with your eyes, not with your hands. Take pictures, take memories, but leave the stones where they lie. Some things are not just history, they are anchors, and you never, ever want to be the one responsible for pulling one loose. You don't know what it's holding down.